Hey guys, Player V here. Today I'm going over the Barbarian class for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. More of the roleplay side of the Barbarian and less the technical aspect. The technical aspect is very simple for the Barbarian. It just goes in there, rages, and attacks things. It's a very straightforward class to play. You put points into strength and then con, and that's it, you're good to go. But I feel like a lot of people play the Barbarian all in the same way, in which they're mindless idiots or oafs and they just there to fight things, which again, that's a way to play the class, but I feel like there's a lot more that you can get from the class roleplay wise. So I'll be going over that today. One of the things I wanted to go over was that the class really depends on also the subclass, the way you're going to roleplay it. Something like a Path of Berserker is just like a flat regular barbarian, and playing something like a Path of Berserker barbarian, it's more understandable to be the mindless idiot because you're just literally going in there and raging. Mechanically wise, the exhaustion thing's a bit iffy, but I mean, it's up to you. Something like a totem barbarian is more of like the shaman type, so something like this where your totem is important to you and it's an aspect of your barbarian character. Something like a Path of the Totem Warrior leans very heavily on the shamanistic type barbarian, role-playing it in a way in which it's commune with the spirits, or that it's kind of like a druid, but in a way that the animals themselves manifest in you instead of protecting them. There's the Ancestral Guardian, which is a very spiritualist barbarian, in which it's your ancestors that give you your strength. This is the type that would probably be very superstitious of a barbarian. In Xanatar's guide, they have like superstition tables in which you can look at, and it's like, oh, don't touch dead bodies because your ancestors don't like that and stuff. And you can really role play the Ancestral Guardian any way you want. An example is I played a Warforged barbarian, and he was like a wrestler, and his Ancestral Guardians were like Hall of Fame WWE wrestlers, and the spirits of them would come out, and I would roll on a table, and the different ones would come out and have different sayings and stuff like that. But you know, it can be anything. It could be your great grandmother or your great grandfather or whatever, or the spirits of your tribe or whatever. And you know, it really depends on how you want to play it. There's a Storm Herald, of course, which is the classic type. One of the things that I always think of when I think of a Storm Herald is someone like Thrall from World of Warcraft, where his rage and his anger manifests itself in elemental powers. So the idea that you're so angry that nature itself bends to your will can be very powerful, and you should kind of play that type of barbarian in a way in which it's very druidy, more like ranger actually, very being in touch with nature, knowing its power and stuff like that. It can be a very powerful class, and it also depends on where you're from, in your background. So if you're like a very sea driven barbarian, like you're in the sea or you're a pirate or something, then maybe the Storm Herald that's from the ocean, I forgot which one is that, I think Tundra or something like that, or Oceanic, whatever. Each one has a different element incorporated into it. And let's see what else. There's the Path of the Zealot, which is like a cleric who snapped one day, who's like, I need to spread my word, or I am the raw muscle of my god. It's kind of like a paladin, but paladins usually know the oaths and stuff like that, and they have to follow them, where the Path of the Zealot is just pure, I need to get my word across, or kind of like a crusader, if you would. It's kind of the mindset you want to go in. And you know, Path of the Zealot, it really pushes itself towards a cleric-y type class, so maybe it's a a priest or something that one day snapped and was like, listen, nobody went to my church or whatever, and then just the anger builds. And then there's the Path of the Battle Rager, which is just your armored guy who has a bunch of spikes and he rages and stuff. He wears heavy armor instead of the normal one, so maybe, you know, it's kind of like a fightery type class. But more importantly, I feel like the Barbarian, most importantly, in roleplay aspects, is where it needs the most improvement, because a lot of people play it very simple-mindedly, very one note and done. There's different ways to play the Barbarian. One of the best examples is someone like Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner has this rage inside of him, but outside of the Hulk, so outside of the Barbarian part of him, he's a very smart person. He's a scientist. He's an intellectual. He's very smart, but he snaps. His emotions get the best of him, and he snaps. And that's a way you can play your Barbarian. It's someone who is smart, so, you know, points into intelligence, or, you know, he can be proficient with herbalism kit, and outside of combat, he can make the party potions or stuff like that, because he's smart. He's not an idiot or an oaf or just there to fight, because a lot of players who play Barbarians fall into this loop in which they just want to kill things, and there's more outside of combat that they just don't do anything, or they try intimidation and stuff like that, and it usually doesn't work because their charisma's low. Intimidation should really be tied with strength, I believe, but you know, so you're playing with someone like Bruce Banner, doing stuff outside of combat. You just don't want to step on the toes of like the wizard or something like that, but you know, it's possible, because you know, you look at someone like the Avengers, where they had both Tony Stark and Bruce Banner on the same team, and they're both, you know, intelligent people, but they played off of each other. But yeah, you know, that's one aspect, the way I look at it. You know, I gave the example of a female shaman, a female barbarian, in which she has this inner rage, but it manifests itself into protecting the wild, or in the aspects of nature, kind of finding yourself in nature. There's, you know, the classic barbarian, which is still good, you know, someone like a classic barbarian who's mindless and just kills, you know, there's things about it that can change it, you know, maybe its background or what place it's from, because a barbarian who lives in the desert its whole life is going to be very different from a barbarian who lives in like a wintry area, or like somewhere up north in your campaign. More like Norse barbarian, or like a city barbarian, someone like a bouncer, you know, depending on where it's from, changes the type of barbarian it is. You know, you got the modern interpretation of someone who would be a barbarian. You know, the colonials who came over, they believed that the Native Americans were barbarians, which they weren't, but they were very in tune with nature, and, you know, they would have these giant tribes of people, and they would, you know, rally up, and when they were going to fight or kill or war or whatever, they would, you know, sing songs and talk about, you know, they're dead and all this other stuff. And it's another way you can take the barbarian. You know, maybe they have a barbarian camp where there's a bunch of barbarians, and they live in huts or whatever, and the barbarian is there for, you know, it's like, you take your barbarian, so why is your barbarian traveling? Because at a certain point, the village needs you to leave and, you know, gather information, or tell them about how the world is, or find yourself, or something like that, before you can return to the village as a champion or a hero or someone like that. You know, these are very common things that a tribe would do because of overpopulation and stuff like that. So they would send their young out there, and they'd be like, hey, you need to go out there and make something of yourself, and then come back, and, you know, you can join us or whatever. And think about how your tribe works. You know, your barbarian camp, you know, is there a chief? Do you want to be chief of the village? You know, maybe there was a plague, you know, same like back to the Native American thing. When the colonials came, they brought disease and they wiped out the camp. You know, there could be another way that you think, oh, I'm adventuring now because I lost my camp. My people died because the elves spread a disease among them, and so I don't trust elves. But remember, when you do these things, never do it against the party. So if there's a party elf, be like, oh, I don't like elves, but he's okay because he's protecting me and he's cool, stuff like that. You want to keep the stuff kind of fairly leveled. Another idea is, the barbarian who lives in an icy region. Maybe they'd be more shamanistic toward like polar bears or penguins or whatever, and it's more of a survival aspect of the barbarian. So maybe they have higher wisdom for survival checks, and they're more in tune with surviving in harsh environments. Why did they leave? Maybe a very easy example is that they had their tribe, and then at a young age a bunch of trolls came down and wiped out the village, and now you have this rage for trolls and stuff like that. It's very simple ideas. Now, some ideas that you want to think about for your barbarian is the background. Now, I think background really affects how the barbarian plays a lot. So here's some examples. An acolyte background for barbarian, they served in a temple. This goes hand in hand with the path of the zealot. They were in service of a temple, and they snapped one day, or someone defiled the temple, and they just snapped. And it's another way you can play your barbarian, in which when they snap, they don't remember what happens in between their rage. They snap, and then they come into consciousness, and they're like, what happened? There's blood and bodies everywhere. Criminal background for your barbarian is very simple. He's a bouncer or a bodyguard for somebody. He has this inner city rage and stuff like that. He's a very he knows the ins and outs of cities, kind of like a rogue. There's the entertainer. Entertainer's pretty easy. He can be, maybe he just snaps. People don't appreciate his art, and one day he snaps, or people don't appreciate his music and he snaps. Or you could take the variant, which is the gladiator, and a gladiator barbarian makes sense, and it gives another way to role play. They can use that skill that the entertainer got to get free betting and stuff for the party, for entertaining, or being a gladiator, or being a bodyguard for the tavern for the night and stuff like that. It gives many different aspects on how someone like a gladiator barbarian, the mindset, this is a person who's highly skilled and highly trained, because remember that barbarians are skilled in all weapons and simple and martial, so they're trained somehow, and being a gladiator makes a lot of sense. Folk hero, maybe you were the hero of a village or your camp. Maybe you saved the camp. This is a little better off for like a 5th level barbarian if you're going to start at a higher level than 1st level. Maybe you were a folk hero, and you have a name, but you were shunned or something, like maybe like, okay, so example, maybe your barbarian camp was like, you're never allowed to use, I don't know, a metal weapon, right? Let's say that they were all stone weapons and stuff, and then this creature came and it was attacking the village, and you picked up a steel sword or something like that, and you killed it, and you're a hero to the village, but they had to shun you, they had to let you go. Kind of like if you've ever played Fallout 1, because the fact that you left the vault, you can never come back, but you're still a hero to them. So something like that. Guild artisan, trade skills are always nice, and the same thing, maybe you're an artist who snaps and people don't appreciate me and you go crazy. The hermit's very simple. Someone who knows they have this inner rage in them, and they're afraid of it, or a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of personality who's like, you're not going to want to see this, please don't get me angry, or whatever. And you need to come up with reasons for why your character will be traveling. So someone like a hermit who has always been recluse, maybe this was it, like this was the time that we were like, I'm going to adventure, I need to figure out how to control my anger and stuff like that. That's a good way to play it. Noble background. When I think of a noble background for a barbarian, I think of kind of like a tsundere, or someone who kind of like Catherine from or Karen from Street Fighter 5. You got the girl laugh and stuff. someone who thinks they're better than them and hates the peasants and noble class. I can see a evil barbarian noble as a thing. The stuck up rich kid who stomps on people's faces and stuff, and it could be a really cool way to play a barbarian. Outlander, that's more of your lived in the wild. Could be really good for the totem warrior, raised by wolves and shit like that. Let's see, sage background. The sage background is interesting, someone who's been trained and stuff in ways of nature and a druidy type thing. Sailor's a great way to play a barbarian. Could be the pirate type, or maybe you were the muscle, or something as simple as you were the guy who had to lift up boxes and stuff like that. You have a lot of strength. You're really strong, like ridiculously strong. Like having an 18-inch strength is crazy. You like lift up horses and stuff. Like it's ridiculous. You can grapple things that are twice your size. So you can, it's crazy the amount of strength you have. So someone like that working a ship or something can be really, strong and important to the ship, and it's great for a sailor background. And then the soldier background. And when you're doing something like a soldier background, you could just be the flat, regular soldier. You did some training on a boat or whatever. I mean, on the battlefield and all that other stuff. But maybe your barbarian has some type of PTSD or something. Maybe he blacks out in a fit of rage, and he can remember the bodies of his companions and stuff like that. Maybe he was lost at a war or something like that, and this way you have this other aspect to the barbarian where it's like, yes, barbarians are powerful and stuff, but with something like a soldier, it's like, yeah, I rank and file, I listen to city guards, and I'm lawful and stuff like that, but I have this thing where war is awful, and different aspects to think about than just the usual like Conan the Barbarian and just get women and stuff like that, which again, you can play the barbarian like that. It's fine, but I feel like too many people just think the barbarian is that, when the barbarian could be many things. So just something for you guys to think about. And, leave your comments below. Tell me what you think. And I hope this was helpful. Catch you guys later. Bye.